I'm Deirdre. I'm in recovery for codependency, and I still feel pretty young in my recovery, so I'm very honored to be sharing with all of you today. And as I decided, oh, I think I want to talk about acceptance. That seemed like the thing God was inviting me to. And then as I was preparing, it started to shade into gratitude and how that's really been helpful to me in my recovery. So we'll also talk about that. I remembered that I was sharing today, but I'm staying with a friend for the week, and I did not remember to pack my copy of the big book. And so the beginning, I'm going to paraphrase from it because I don't have it with me. But one of the most helpful stories at the end of the big book for me was about this guy who he spent a couple of paragraphs talking about how acceptance was the key to his recovery, and as much as he could cultivate acceptance was the extent that he could pursue his recovery and sobriety. And so that really stuck out with me. And the other thing he said was that nothing happens in God's world by accident. And so that got me thinking about all of the things that I've had to accept in my recovery, and there are a lot of them. At the beginning, I had to accept that I didn't have normal relationships with some people in my life. Like, part of codependency is that I didn't have self-control when it came to these people. I didn't have the ability to say, okay, we spent enough time together now, and I'm going to go spend time with somebody else or do something else. And my mind, even when I wasn't with these people, was a mass of questions and confusion and tension and fear of what will I say to them next time? What if they need me? I'm not available. What will they do next? I should probably go read this book because that would help me know how to help them better. Maybe I'll talk to this person and they'll be able to help me help them better. So I had mediocre external boundaries, like I'd be late for other people because I was spending time with this person who really needed me. And then I wouldn't have enough time to be with the other people in my life who I had responsibilities toward. And I had to accept that this wasn't okay and it wasn't normal, and that I had a problem that was bigger than I could handle by myself. And that was really painful. It was really painful, and I had a lot of shame and a lot of confusion and how did I get here? And what have I done? I have made a mess where I was trying to help people. And I also had to accept, even though I have position of leadership and I'm in charge, and I spend a lot of time pointing people to God, and I wasn't any better off than any of them. I had these problems that I couldn't fix, and I was just really cleverly hiding my sin and my brokenness and my inability to help by helping all these other people. But that was good because that meant I could get help. Once I knew that I wasn't okay and I didn't have normal relationships, then I could be okay, what is now? And I was well, I know how to help myself. I've been doing this for years. And so I thought a little bit, and then I had to accept that God's plan for my recovery was not the same as my plan. If you'd asked me before I accepted the extent of my problems, what would I do? Would I have time or emotional energy to invest in something like LifeLab, where we're going through the 12 steps and investing in inner healing? I would have said, no, the 12 steps are for the really, really broken people. And I'm not really, really broken, only a little bit. And I've already done a lot of internal healing and spiritual healing. And I think that's probably I need something else. But God was very kind and very patient, and he gave me some very kind and very patient people. And he helped me see that I did need help, and that this is how he was offering me the help, is this class and these people. And he was also very kind to point out, Deirdre, you are tired and busy and confused and stressed, and the point of this is to help you be less of those things, and more in tune with me. And that's what healing is all about. And I was like, oh yeah, like I can trust that if God is in this, then I will be different and I will be better by the end of it. And so as I took LifeLab and worked on my recovery, I then had to accept that love was different than I thought it was. Like I built my life around helping people, um, and loving them, but really there was always an amount of fear or self-preservation or desire for control and to feel good about myself under all of it. And I was driven by fear, and I was driven by fear of not being able to help people and of them not being able to help me and of being alone and feeling abandoned, and none of that was love. That was all self-fueling and self-perpetuating and just growing more and more fear inside of me. And in learning that like I couldn't help myself and I needed God, I learned that I couldn't help other people, that they needed God too. And I could point them toward Him and be like a conduit for His love, but I couldn't fix anybody any more than I could fix myself. And that was really hard. I was raised by a Dutch mother and an American father, and that's pretty high in the list of independent cultures in the world. Like, if your relative dies, then you can accept casseroles for like a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then you're on your own. Like that's about as much like communal support as felt appropriate and normal to me. And you handle your emotions on your own, and I learned to do that from a very young age. And I've always been pretty good at figuring it out on my own. Like my parents were not super emotionally available, so I was like, okay, I can handle my emotions and do that by myself. But it did stop working, and the extent to which it worked was never very actually effective if I looked at it. And so I needed to accept that I needed to come and ask God and ask other people to help me with my problems. And this was very concrete. I could say in the morning, okay, God, what about today? And God would say, well, this plan you have here is a less good plan. Let's think of something else. I'd be like, okay, fine. Or he could say, actually, you're doing a little much. Maybe you could take a slow afternoon. And I would say, I feel fine. He'd be like, yeah, but your feelings are not a great gauge of how you're doing right now. I'd be like, okay, fine. Or he could say, hey, this person, I think you could message them today. Or your housemate is not doing so well. Maybe you could cook supper or take care of the kids and give me appropriate ways to care for people and things that he was inviting me to do rather than I was feeling obligated or pressured by myself to do for people. And when I couldn't fall asleep at night, I could ask God, please help me fall asleep. And he would. Sometimes he would be trying to teach me something like how I need to consume less caffeine, and I was awake because I'd had caffeine, and then I'd be like, okay, I will learn from this experience. But in the times when I was anxious or thinking too fast, I could say, God, please help me fall asleep, and he would do that. And I was like, wow, you know, this is a pretty good system. Like, I can't fix myself, but God really actually can in the big ways of codependency and also the small daily unhealthy things that like fed into that. So these days, I think the acceptance piece that I'm working on, which will not surprise any of you, is accepting other people. As I did inventories and learned about my resentments and my fears, I realized how very resentful and angry I actually was. I never would have said, I would have said, oh, and people would say, oh, you're so kind. And, but like, it's like my eyes were open. Like I had been walking around with blinders on and suddenly doing the inventories and doing all this internal work, I was like, oh, there's a lot of places where little things get big inside of me and they don't need to. And I never would have said that, and now I don't even feel in control of most of it. Like I walk away from a conversation with a friend, and then suddenly I'm resentful, and I'm like, how did you get there? What happened? Like, what's going on? And it's little stuff and big stuff. Like this weekend, I met some new people for what was a very rare occurrence since COVID, and they drove me home. And I got out of the car and walked to the front walkway, and then I thought, I wonder what they're saying about me now in the car. And I was afraid. I was like, oh, what if I said something wrong while we were hanging out, or they didn't like me, or like they're judging me right now. And that was the moment, and I was like, well, I don't know where that came from, but I must bring it to God and ask him to help me not feel afraid and insecure and self-conscious in these new relationships that I have. This also works out in church. I'll be in Bible study, and I'll be like, "You are also incorrect about the scripture. You don't know what you're." I just sit there and listen. I try to be patient and kind, but then I'll say something, and I'll realize after I said it, oh, that came out of frustration and impatience, and not out of like love or kindness or curiosity about these people and their thoughts about scripture. And one day after Bible study, I came home and I was like, okay, God, I think I have resentment toward my Bible study. And he's like, you can learn from these people. And I was like, well, they're incorrect. He's like, well, even if they're incorrect, you can still learn from them. You can learn patience and love and hope and kindness, and not like, and a way to be with people that doesn't mean everyone has to be the same in order for you to be together and get along. And that was really helpful for me and really good, because that was the thing that helped me start to see that that's a small thing, but there's big things too, like big pain and big hurt and big questions about relationships I have, that I'm like, oh, these are also invitations to learn and accept people and accept myself and accept what God is trying to teach me and say to me. And if I live in resentment and fear, then it's like a tunnel vision to resentment and fear, and I miss out on all of the things that God could be telling me and helping me with and helping me to grow in. If all I think about is the pain and the difficulty. And then I read this verse in Philippians, which you've probably heard a billion million times because it's one of those verses. But it says, it's Philippians 4:6, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. And the thing that stuck out to me there was, like, you're praying in everything, like everything, and you're also grateful. Like there's thanksgiving and there's petition. And I started wondering, like, what if I was thankful for more things? Like it's always a process, there are things I'm like, I'm not grateful for that yet. Maybe someday sanctified Deirdre will be healthy and happy and grateful for the really big hard things. But I can manage it in the little things. I can manage it in my Bible study, to be thankful for the people who I disagree with. And the more I can push acceptance to gratitude, the more peace I have, like it says in this verse. And I can feel at peace with myself and with God and with the people he's put around me. And that's like I think that's like kind of the next level that God is inviting me to. And gratitude is beautiful. Like, I lived at camp for 4 months this year with like a fraction of the things that I usually have. And I came home and I was like, I'm so grateful for the forest and the space and the silence. And I'm so grateful for the people that I get to see in the city, and for things like consistent heat. That they don't have that at camp. And my time at camp in the simplicity of the forest and the silence made me better able to live in the city where there's all of these distractions and options of what you could do. And I didn't need to go get a coffee to feel happy. I didn't need to go have this experience or that experience to be contented and grateful. And gratitude and um, God being enough, and the relationships that I currently have being enough, and trusting God to be good to the people that I love and not trying to fix them myself, and not even trying to fix me myself. That has produced this peace that surpasses all understanding. And that's the guard against the resentment and the fear and the codependent behaviors coming back in and messing with me again. So that is what I had to say. Thank you for listening, and happy to hear what you have to say now.